This Torah portion relates Pharaoh's dream and Joseph's interpretation. The cupbearer finally remembered Joseph, who had correctly interpreted the dreams he and the baker had had while in prison. Joseph could have languished in the prison the rest of his life had not the cupbearer remembered him to Joseph. And if I were Joseph, I'd be asking, what took you so long to remember me? But the cupbearer did remember Joseph, and there was no mention of Joseph castigating him. More important matters were at hand. Pharaoh's dream needed to be interpreted. None of the magicians of Egypt could give the meaning of the dream. Pharaoh called for Joseph to be brought up out of the prison. When Joseph appeared before Pharaoh, he made it clear that God was the one that would be giving the interpretation. Both dreams predicted a severe famine for 7 years. And because it was repeated, it meant that the matter is determined by God and he will quickly bring it about. Their interpretation of the dreams could have stopped at the foretelling of the events, but Joseph took it a step farther. He not only interpreted the dream, but provided sound counsel on what to do about the situation. For this, Pharaoh set him second in command over the whole of Egypt. Did Joseph recall his own dream that he'd had years before about the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him? Remembering them certainly must have bolstered his faith. Throughout his life, he always gave God the credit. Nowhere is it recorded that he complained or questioned God's plans. Joseph immediately began gathering food and grain and storing it in anticipation of the foretold 7 years of famine. The famine was not only in Egypt, but over the land of Israel and beyond. Because Joseph believed God, many lives were saved, including those of Joseph's own family in Canaan. And his wisdom saved the line of Messiah from certain extinction. Solomon, David and Bathsheba's son, was God's choice to continue the Davidic lineage. Instead of wealth and power over his enemies, he asked God for wisdom. God granted his request, and Scripture says of Solomon that he had a wise and discerning heart, so that there has been no one like him before, nor shall there be like one after him. Because Solomon didn't ask for riches, God gave him riches anyway. And he gave him honor greater than all the kings of his day. Solomon went and stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings to God. He wanted to connect with God in a very personal manner. Solomon was called on to judge a case between two women. At first glance, it would seem to be a very difficult decision to accurately rule on. Because Solomon had asked God for wisdom, he was able to correctly discern the correct judgment. Cutting the baby in half was his solution, but was designed to show the true mother of the child. The Brit Hadashah account of Yeshua on the road to Emmaus is one of my favorite passages in the New Covenant. Imagine getting a first-hand interpretation of messianic prophecies. As sincere as they were, they just could not come to grips with the fact that all they'd experienced over the past 3 years was suddenly gone. Their lives could never go back to what they were before. Where would they go? Most of the rabbis in Jerusalem were not believers, and the disciples were in hiding. Their lives had been turned upside down, but the one walking with them made their hearts to burn within them. Meet the Messiah, finder of lost sheep. As they sat to break bread, their eyes were opened, and they realized who they had been walking and talking with all along. Did we sometimes fail to recognize Messiah in our circumstances? The common thread running through these passages is that what is seen isn't always the whole picture. God has a larger plan if we learn to see through God's eyes. Joseph could have simply interpreted the dream without taking the extra steps providing a solution to the impending famine. Solomon was presented with a seemingly impossible situation, but with God's wisdom, he made the correct judgment. The disciples on the road to Emmaus were so self-focused on the events of the past few days that they failed to recognize the one who was at the center of their attention and conversation. Trust in him, and he will give you purpose and hope. Shabbat shalom.